It was a typical rush hour morning in the city. The bus was packed, the seats almost all taken, and the air was thick with the smell of coffee and fast-paced conversations. Maya, a young black woman with an effortless sense of style and a quiet intensity about her, stood near the back of the bus, her mind wandering. She'd just finished an early class at the community college and was on her way to a part-time job at a cafe. It wasn't glamorous, but it was enough for now. She hadn't expected to see him, the elderly man. He stepped on the bus with a slow, deliberate gait, his face etched with years of wisdom, or perhaps weariness. His gray hair was neatly combed back, and his tailored suit looked out of place in the sea of casual wear around him. As the bus lurched forward, the elderly man swayed slightly, his grip on the metal pole weak but determined. Maya noticed the slight tremor in his hands as he adjusted his hold. Her eyes met his for a split second, and something shifted in the air. It was subtle, but she could feel it, a silent understanding passing between them. Without thinking, Maya stood up, offering him her seat. "Please, take my seat," she said softly, her voice gentle but firm. The man looked at her, and his eyes softened, as if he hadn't been offered a seat in a long time. "Thank you, young lady," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He sank into the seat, adjusting himself carefully, and Maya moved to stand near the door. As she stood there, staring out the window, she couldn't help but wonder about him. Who was he? What was his story? But before she could ask herself any more questions, the bus lurched again, throwing everyone into brief chaos. And then, just as the bus started to steady itself, the elderly man tapped her on the shoulder. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice low, but carrying a certain weight. "I have something for you." Maya turned to face him, unsure of what to expect. He handed her a small folded note, its edges worn and soft, as though it had been carried around for much longer than a day. "Just a little something," he said, his eyes twinkling with an unreadable emotion. Maya hesitated. It wasn't every day that someone gave you a note on a crowded bus, especially someone you didn't know. But there was something in his expression that made her pause, curiosity stirring inside her. She took the note, her fingers brushing his as she did, and sat down on the nearest available seat, still unsure of what was happening. The bus rumbled on, and Maya unfolded the note. It read, "You have no idea how much you just changed my life." The words sat there on the paper, their weight heavier than anything she'd expected. She looked up, glancing quickly at the elderly man, but he was already lost in thought, staring out of the window, his hand resting lightly on the edge of the seat. Had he written it for her? Or was it meant for someone else? For a moment, Maya wasn't sure what to think. But something inside her stirred, an undeniable curiosity. Why had he said that? What did it mean? She folded the note back up, tucking it into her bag. She would figure this out later. But as the bus continued down its route, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter, brief as it had been, was something more than just a simple act of kindness. It felt like a sign, an opening to something bigger, something that, for better or worse, would soon change the course of her life. What would you have done if you were Maya? Would you have opened the note right away, or waited? Share your thoughts with us in the comments. Maya couldn't stop thinking about the note. As the bus rolled on toward her stop, her mind raced. What did it mean? Why had that elderly man given her a note at all? The words kept echoing in her head. "You have no idea how much you just changed my life." She had never been one to jump to conclusions, but there was something about this entire encounter that felt significant. After all, she had only given up her seat, a simple gesture of kindness that didn't feel extraordinary at the time. It was just what she did. Nothing more, nothing less. The thing was, Maya had always been taught to be kind. Her grandmother had ingrained it in her from a young age. Be the change you want to see in the world. Those words had stuck with her. She had spent most of her life trying to live by them, even when it didn't always seem to make a difference. Her grandmother, who had been like a mother to her, had been the type of person who never hesitated to offer help, whether it was making extra food for a neighbor or volunteering at the local shelter. Maya had seen firsthand the impact that small acts of kindness could have on people. So, when the elderly man had boarded the bus, Maya had acted instinctively, without hesitation. It was simply what felt right in that moment. But the note, that was different. She had never expected a stranger to thank her, much less leave her a message that hinted at something deeper. As the bus came to a halt at her stop, Maya quickly exited, her thoughts still tangled around the encounter. She walked briskly to the cafe where she worked, but her mind kept drifting back to the elderly man and that cryptic note. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him than met the eye. The day passed quickly, filled with the usual hustle and bustle of waiting tables, refilling coffee cups, and wiping down countertops. Yet, Maya's thoughts were always elsewhere, wondering about the man who had given her the note. Her shift ended, and she was walking to the bus stop to head home when, to her surprise, she saw him again. Henry. She recognized him immediately, even though he was farther down the street. His gait was slower now, as though age had caught up with him in ways his appearance didn't show. But he was unmistakable. Maya hesitated. What was she supposed to do? Should she approach him? Should she ask him about the note? Her heart raced with uncertainty. But then, something inside her nudged her forward. After all, it wasn't every day that someone handed you a note with such a strange, yet powerful message. Maybe it was time to finally find out what it meant. She walked up to him, and when he noticed her, he stopped, his face breaking into a warm, albeit slightly tired smile. "Hello, miss," he greeted her, his voice steady, though there was a quiet sorrow to it. "Hi," Maya said, a bit unsure of how to begin. I wanted to thank you for the note earlier today. I don't quite understand it, but it really made me think." Henry's smile deepened, and his eyes seemed to soften. "Ah, I see. I'm glad you found it. I wasn't sure if you would." He adjusted his coat and glanced around, as if gathering his thoughts. "Can I buy you a coffee?" Maya offered impulsively. "I'm not sure why, but I feel like there's something more to that note than I can understand. Maybe we could talk?" Henry regarded her thoughtfully for a moment, his eyes searching her face, before nodding slowly. "That sounds nice, miss. I'd like that." They walked to a nearby cafe, where the smell of roasted beans and freshly baked pastries greeted them. Maya felt a strange sense of comfort as they sat down in a quiet corner. It was as if, by sharing this small moment with him, the world had slowed down, if only for a brief while. "Before I say anything else, let me introduce myself properly," Henry began, his voice warm but full of an unspoken weight. "I'm Henry. I've lived in this city for a long time, but not many people know my story. I'm sure you've heard the saying, 'Don't judge a book by its cover.'" Maya nodded. "Of course. But you seem like you've lived quite a life. If you don't mind me asking, what made you give me that note?" Henry leaned back in his chair, his eyes flicking briefly to the window as though looking for an answer in the view. "It's a long story," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "But it starts with something small, a gesture that most people would overlook, or think is nothing. It's the little things, you see, the things that make you feel seen, heard, like you matter. That note, I didn't write it for you specifically, but when I saw you stand up for me, something in me clicked." Maya listened intently, the weight of his words sinking in. There was more to this than just a simple act of kindness. Have you ever had an encounter with a stranger that changed your perspective on life? How did it make you feel? Let us know in the comments below. Maya sat quietly, her coffee cup warm in her hands as she listened to Henry. She could feel the weight of his words in the air between them, heavy with something she couldn't quite place. She had always been a good listener, but there was something about this moment that made her heart race with anticipation. She had thought the note would be a simple thank you, but now she was learning that there was much more beneath the surface. Henry continued, his eyes never leaving the table as he spoke, his voice low but clear. "You know," he said, "I wasn't always an old man. Once, I was just like you, full of dreams, of hope, ready to take on the world. But somewhere along the way, life happens. I lost my wife, my health started to fail, and I realized that the world had moved on without me. I became invisible." Maya felt a pang of sympathy in her chest. She hadn't known the man's story, but now that he was sharing it with her, she could feel his pain, his years of loneliness. It wasn't just his age that had made him feel forgotten. It was the passage of time itself, the feeling that no one cared anymore, that no one even saw him. I used to be a lawyer, Henry continued, his voice tinged with nostalgia. I had clients, colleagues, a family. But when you get older, people don't need you as much. Your value starts to fade. And when you're forgotten by those closest to you, it's easy to feel like you're nothing. Maya didn't know how to respond to that. She had never experienced the kind of loneliness Henry was describing. Her family, though far away, had always been supportive, and she had always had friends around her. But as she looked at Henry, she understood something deep, something that made her chest tighten. So, when I saw you give me your seat today, it hit me, he said, finally looking up at her. It's been a long time since someone treated me like I mattered. Most people would have just ignored me, too busy with their own lives to notice. But you noticed. Maya swallowed, her throat tight. She had never thought that giving up a seat could mean so much to someone. It was just a simple act of kindness, something she had done 1,000 times before. But for Henry, it was more than just a seat. It was an acknowledgement that he existed. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, Maya said softly, her voice filled with surprise. I just thought you might need it. Henry gave her a small, bittersweet smile. That's exactly it, miss. The little things matter. You never know when someone is just waiting for someone else to notice them, to see them for who they really are. Maya sat back in her chair, processing everything Henry had said. She had no idea that something as small as giving up her seat could have such a profound impact on someone. She had always thought of herself as just another face in the crowd, but now, she realized that her actions, her kindness, could ripple out in ways she hadn't even imagined. But you gave me that note, Henry, she said after a moment, her curiosity piqued once again. Why? What's in that note? Henry paused, his expression growing serious. He took a deep breath before speaking again. That note. It's part of something bigger, Maya. Something I've been carrying for years. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out an old, worn photograph. He slid it across the table to her. Maya stared down at the photo. It was black and white, faded with time. In the picture, a young Henry stood with a woman who looked remarkably like him. Only she was smiling, her eyes shining with a kind of joy that Maya had never seen in Henry. She looked to be in her late 20s, and Henry's arm was wrapped around her shoulders, holding her close. This is my wife, Elizabeth, Henry said quietly, his voice trembling slightly. We were married for 50 years. She was the love of my life. But life has a way of taking things from you when you least expect it. Maya's heart sank as she looked back at Henry. She could see the sorrow in his eyes, the deep well of grief that had never fully healed. Elizabeth passed away a few years ago, he continued. Cancer. It was quick, too quick. And after she was gone, I felt lost, like I was drifting through life without a purpose. I couldn't even get up some days. It wasn't just her passing. It was the realization that I had lost everything I'd known. Maya didn't know what to say. She couldn't imagine losing someone she loved so deeply, someone who had been her partner for so long. She reached out instinctively, her hand resting gently on top of his. I'm so sorry, she whispered. I can't even imagine what that must have been like. Henry nodded slowly, his hand curling around hers as if it was the first human touch he'd felt in ages. It was hard, he said, his voice cracking. But the hardest part was how invisible I became. I thought people cared, but when it came down to it, I was just another old man, a forgotten soul. I stopped feeling like I mattered. Maya was stunned. She had never thought of the elderly in that way. Their lives weren't just filled with memories. They were still living, still wanting to be seen, to be valued. Henry's voice softened. That's why I gave you that note. You reminded me that there's still kindness in this world. You reminded me that I'm not invisible, that I matter. And for that, I will always be grateful. Maya squeezed his hand gently, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions, sadness, empathy, and an overwhelming sense of gratitude that she had been able to make a difference in his life, no matter how small. Have you ever experienced a loss that made you feel invisible or forgotten? How did you find a way to heal or be seen again? Share your story with us in the comments. Maya sat in the cafe, her hand still resting on top of Henry's, the weight of his story settling into her bones. The elderly man's words, heavy with grief and longing, seemed to echo in the quiet space between them. She had always known that life was unpredictable, but she hadn't realized just how fragile it could be until now. As Henry sat in front of her, his hands trembling slightly as he clasped the edges of his coffee cup, Maya could sense the deep emotional void he was trying to fill. It wasn't just the loss of his wife. It was the feeling of becoming irrelevant. In a world that moved faster with each passing day, she thought of her own life, her goals, her dreams, and how she had so much yet to achieve. It made her realize just how important the present moment was, how every act of kindness, no matter how small, could hold profound meaning. "I never really had anyone to talk to about all of this," Henry said, his voice quieter now, almost as if he were confiding in a trusted friend. "Not since Elizabeth passed. People are busy with their own lives, and I don't want to burden anyone with my story. But you gave me the space to be heard, and that's something I haven't felt in years." Maya's heart ached for him. She had never thought of how the elderly must feel, isolated, pushed aside by a society that prioritized youth and productivity. She had grown up with her grandmother's wisdom, always encouraged to be compassionate, but now, sitting here with Henry, she realized how easy it was to overlook those who were older, whose stories were often left untold. "I'm glad you opened up to me," Maya said, her voice steady, though her emotions were a whirlwind inside her. "I didn't know it would mean so much, but I'm happy I could be here for you." Henry looked at her, his eyes glimmering with something that resembled hope, a feeling that had long been absent from his life. "You didn't just give me a seat on that bus, Maya. You gave me something I didn't even know I was missing. I had forgotten what it felt like to matter, to feel like I could still contribute something to this world. And now, I have a chance to be heard again." Maya took a deep breath, the weight of his words sinking in. "I don't know what to say," she admitted, feeling a little out of her depth. "I've always just tried to be kind, but I never imagined it could make such a big difference." Kindness, Henry mused, is a rare commodity these days. People rush through their lives, forgetting that we're all connected. It's the simple things, giving a seat, holding the door open for someone, that can change everything. You might not see it right away, but the ripple effects are real. They last longer than you think. Maya thought about this, her mind racing. What Henry said resonated with her deeply. She had always been a believer in kindness, but now she understood just how powerful those small gestures could be. She realized that she, too, had been moving through life too quickly, focused on her classes, her job, her future, without taking the time to connect with the people around her. Henry's presence was a reminder to her of the importance of human connection. She was so caught up in her own world that she had failed to see the invisible people around her, people like Henry, who carried their own stories, their own burdens, their own triumphs. Suddenly, an idea popped into Maya's mind. What if we did something together? You and me? I mean, I know you've been through a lot, and you've helped me understand so much. Maybe I can help you find a way to connect again. Share your story, your wisdom." Henry raised an eyebrow, intrigued by her suggestion. "How?" Maya hesitated for only a moment before speaking with newfound conviction. "What if we started a little community group? Maybe a support circle where people can share their stories, elderly folks, younger ones, people from all walks of life. It could be a place where people are heard, where they matter. A place where you can tell your story, Henry. It doesn't have to be big, just a small group. It could be the start of something special." Henry's eyes softened, and for the first time in their conversation, he allowed himself a full smile. "You know, miss, that's not a bad idea at all." Maya felt a rush of excitement at the thought. She had never imagined herself organizing something like this, but it felt right, like the perfect way to honor the connection she had made with Henry and to give back in a way that could make a real difference. "I'll help you get started," Maya said firmly. "I can organize the meetings, put up flyers, get the word out. And if people are willing to share, we can provide a space for them to be heard." Henry chuckled softly, his face lighting up. "You're quite the determined one, aren't you? I think you might just be the spark this city needs." Maya laughed, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders as she realized how simple and powerful their idea could be. Maybe, but I think we both are. It's not just me, it's you too. You've got so much to give, Henry, and this world could use more of it. They sat together for a while longer, their conversation moving away from the heavy topics of grief and loss and toward the possibilities of the future. Henry's eyes were no longer clouded with sorrow. Instead, they glimmered with hope, with purpose, as though a new chapter was just beginning for him. And for Maya, too. She had come into this cafe thinking she would hear just a simple story, but instead, she was walking out with a new sense of direction. An opportunity to make a real difference in the lives of people who had been forgotten, just like Henry. Maya had always believed in kindness. But now, she was beginning to understand that kindness wasn't just about giving something up. It was about giving people a voice, about offering them a chance to be seen and heard. And that was the most powerful thing she could ever offer. Have you ever thought about how you could help others feel seen and heard? What small gesture or idea could make a big difference in someone's life? Share your thoughts with us below. The weeks following Maya's conversation with Henry were a blur of activity, anticipation, and new beginnings. What started as a simple idea between two strangers in a cafe had quickly snowballed into something much more significant. A movement to bring people together, to make sure they weren't forgotten, no matter their age or circumstance. Maya spent the next several days planning and organizing. She spoke to local community centers, reached out to social media platforms, and even spoke to a few friends who were eager to help. Henry, though initially hesitant, had come on board, encouraging people he knew from the senior center to participate. Together, they had found a small, quiet room at the local library where the first meeting would take place. The first session was held on a crisp Saturday afternoon, and Maya arrived early to prepare. She made sure there were enough chairs, a sign-up sheet, and coffee to welcome the people who would come. She had no idea how many would show up, but the thought of seeing even just a few people gathered to share their stories filled her with hope. As the minutes passed, a handful of people began trickling into the room. An elderly woman named Clara, with her cane in hand, walked in with a smile. A middle-aged man named George followed, holding his wife's arm. There was also a younger woman, about Maya's age, named Alice, who looked as though she were carrying a heavy burden on her shoulders. Maya greeted each person with a warm smile, her heart swelling with the realization that they had all come for one reason: to be seen, to share what was inside them, to tell their stories, and to find the community they had longed for. When everyone had settled into the room, Maya stood at the front, her voice soft but clear as she addressed the small group. Thank you all for coming today. I know it can be difficult to take that first step, but I want you to know that this is a safe space. We're here to listen to each other, to share what's on our hearts, and to remind ourselves that we matter. Henry sat in the front row, his eyes scanning the room, taking in the faces of the people around him. Maya noticed how much more at ease he seemed today. The man who had once seemed so lost was now radiating a quiet confidence, his hands no longer trembling as they had been when they first met. Maya continued, "We all have something to share. Maybe it's a story of love, loss, or something we've learned along the way. This is our space to be heard." After a brief silence, Clara, the elderly woman, raised her hand, and Maya nodded toward her. Clara's voice was shaky at first, but with each word, it grew stronger. "When my husband passed, I felt like I lost my purpose," Clara began. "We had been together for over 50 years. We raised children, built a life. And when he was gone, I found myself alone. People kept telling me to move on, to stay busy. But no one asked how I was really doing, and I was drowning in grief." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes, and for a moment, the room was silent, each person feeling the weight of her words. Maya could see the empathy in their eyes, the way they all recognized a piece of Clara's pain in themselves. "But this group," Clara continued, this feels different. I don't feel so alone anymore. I have people to talk to. And for the first time in a long time, I feel like my story matters." Maya felt a lump form in her throat as Clara's words hung in the air. It was the very reason she had started this group. The belief that everyone had something worth sharing, something that could make someone else feel less invisible. When Clara finished, the room remained quiet for a moment, the weight of her story sinking in. Maya glanced at Henry, who gave her a subtle nod, his eyes filled with pride and gratitude. This was what they had hoped for. A chance to heal, to connect, to be seen. Alice, the young woman sitting at the back, raised her hand next. "I've been struggling with a lot lately," she began, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I've been working 2 jobs, trying to get by, and I've been feeling overwhelmed. I don't have much family left, and it feels like the world is just moving too fast. I keep hearing people talk about how lucky they are to have it all together, and I just feel like I'm failing." There was a pause as everyone absorbed her words, their gazes softening. Maya could see the isolation in Alice's eyes. It was a feeling she knew all too well, the feeling of being overwhelmed by the demands of life, a feeling like you're never doing enough, like you're always a step behind. "You're not failing," Maya said, her voice firm but kind. "I think we all feel that way sometimes. But you're here, and that means something. You're not alone." Alice smiled, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. It was the first time anyone had really acknowledged the weight of her struggles. Maya could see her shoulders relax, the tension lifting just a little. One by one, more people shared their stories. George spoke about the loss of his childhood friend, how their bond had shaped his entire life. Another woman, Betty, talked about her struggles with illness and how she had learned to find strength in vulnerability. Each story was different, but each one shared a common thread: the need to be seen, to be heard, and to be understood. As the meeting came to a close, Maya felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The room, which had once been filled with strangers, now felt like a small community, one where people supported each other, where their stories mattered. She could see the change in Henry too. He was no longer just a man haunted by loss. He was a mentor, a guide, and a beacon of hope for others who had felt invisible, just as he had once felt. "Thank you all for coming," Maya said, her voice filled with emotion. "This is just the beginning. We have so much more to share, so much more to give." As the group began to disperse, Henry stayed behind, waiting for Maya. When they were alone, he approached her, his eyes shining. "You did it, Maya," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You brought us together. You gave us all a place to be heard. I never thought I'd see the day where I'd feel like I had a purpose again. But now, I know I do." Maya smiled, her heart full. "We all do, Henry. We all do." Have you ever been a part of a group that made you feel like your story mattered? What does it mean to you to have a place where you can be truly seen and heard? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Maya couldn't believe how quickly things were falling into place. The group, which had once been a mere idea shared over coffee, was now a regular meeting every Saturday afternoon. More people were coming each week, drawn by the promise of community, of being seen, and of sharing their stories. Henry was the first to arrive each week, a steady presence in the front row, his face glowing with pride as he greeted the newcomers. Clara, Alice, and George were regulars, as well as a few others who had slowly begun to open up about their own struggles. But this Saturday, something unexpected happened. Maya had just finished setting up the chairs when the doors swung open, and in walked a man she didn't recognize. He was tall, dressed in a sharp suit, and had an air of authority about him. His presence seemed to command the room as he surveyed the space, his eyes landing on Maya with a curious glint. For a moment, Maya froze. She didn't know who this man was or what he was doing here, but there was something about his confident stance that made her feel uneasy. The group was meant to be a safe space for people to open up about their lives, not a place for outsiders to intrude. Henry noticed the man as well, his face creasing into a frown. Maya could feel the tension growing in the room as the man approached her. She straightened her back, trying to maintain her composure. "Excuse me," the man said in a deep, smooth voice. "I'm looking for Maya Rodriguez." Maya hesitated for a moment before responding, her voice steady. "I'm Maya. Can I help you?" The man smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I'm Marcus Stevens. I've heard about your group. I'm intrigued by what you're doing here." Maya didn't quite trust the way he said, "intrigued." It sounded more like an evaluation than genuine curiosity. "I'm glad to hear that," she said cautiously. "We're just here to provide a space for people to share their stories. Marcus' eyes flickered to the group sitting quietly in the room, then back to Maya. I understand, but I'm afraid I'm here on business. You see, I work for a local community outreach program, and we're looking for a group like yours to sponsor. We want to bring in more funding, perhaps even partner with you to expand your work. The room fell silent. The idea of outside funding had never crossed Maya's mind. The group was meant to be about people, not money, not expansion. She wasn't sure how she felt about the idea of someone from the outside trying to involve themselves in something so personal. Henry, ever the protector, stood up from his seat. We didn't start this group for profit, he said firmly. It's about real people, real stories. We don't need someone to come in and change that. Maya's heart swelled at Henry's words, but at the same time, she felt a twinge of uncertainty. She didn't want to shut down the possibility of helping more people, but she also didn't want to lose the intimate, personal nature of the group. Was accepting outside help the right move? Marcus, undeterred, took a step closer. I understand your concern, Henry, but think about it. With more resources, we can reach more people, do more for the community. We can bring in new voices, new perspectives, and offer even more support to those who need it. We're offering you a chance to expand your impact. Don't you want to help as many people as possible? Maya's mind raced as she considered his words. She did want to help. She wanted this group to grow and reach more people who needed it, just like Henry had needed it when he first walked through the door. But could they do that without losing what made the group special? The room grew quieter as everyone waited for Maya's response. Clara's eyes met hers, filled with a silent understanding. Alice, too, was watching, her gaze uncertain but curious. Maya knew she had to make a decision. She couldn't let the group become something it wasn't. But she also couldn't deny that the idea of reaching more people, of creating something bigger, was appealing. She took a deep breath, meeting Marcus' gaze. I appreciate your offer, Mr. Stevens, she said, her voice calm but firm. But this group is about connection. It's about people coming together to share their stories without any outside influence. We're not looking for sponsorship or funding. What we need is for people to keep showing up, to keep sharing their lives. That's what's important. Marcus didn't seem entirely pleased with her response, but he nodded politely. I see. Well, if you change your mind, I'm always available. Here's my card. He handed her a sleek, professional-looking business card. I'd hate to see you miss out on an opportunity like this. Maya glanced at the card briefly before slipping it into her pocket. Thank you. I'll keep it in mind. As Marcus turned and walked out of the room, Maya let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The air in the room seemed to lighten as soon as the door closed behind him. Henry gave her a reassuring smile. You did the right thing, Maya. Maya nodded slowly. I hope so, but it's hard. You know, I want to help people, but I don't want to lose the heart of what we're doing here. Clara spoke up from across the room. You'll figure it out, dear. Just remember, it's not about the money. It's about the people. You've already given us a place to belong. That's more than enough. Maya smiled, feeling the weight of Clara's words settle into her heart. The group wasn't about money or outside approval. It was about connection, about providing a safe space for people to be seen and heard. And that was enough. What do you think? Should a group like this accept outside help if it means reaching more people? Or is it important to stay true to the original mission? Share your thoughts with us below. The following week's meeting had a different atmosphere. Maya could feel the shift in the air. Something had changed after the visit from Marcus Stevens. The people in the group seemed more tentative, more cautious. It was as if the idea of outside involvement had planted a seed of doubt in their minds. Despite her best efforts to reassure them, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that the group's foundation was being tested. She had made the right choice, hadn't she? She couldn't compromise the integrity of what they were building. But then again, Marcus's words echoed in her mind. Don't you want to help as many people as possible? It was a difficult balance. Maya knew she had to keep the focus on the group's core mission, but she also understood that there were so many others out there who needed what they were offering. What would it take to get the message across without losing sight of their original vision? As she walked into the room, she was greeted by familiar faces. Clara, who always seemed to arrive early, was already sitting in her usual spot, a soft smile on her face. Alice and George were there too, though George looked unusually quiet. "Hey everyone," Maya greeted them with a warm smile, trying to shake off the unease in her chest. "How's everyone feeling today?" Clara was the first to speak. "I've been thinking a lot about last week," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "I understand why you said no to Marcus, but I also wonder, maybe there's a way to reach more people and keep our group the way it is." Maya's heart tightened at Clara's words. It was clear that even the most seasoned members of the group were wrestling with the idea of growth. Maya took a seat next to Clara, leaning in to listen more closely. "What do you mean?" Maya asked gently. "I think Marcus had a point," Clara said. "What if we could help more people, but still keep this intimate, this real? Maybe there's a way to balance the two." Maya thought about it for a long moment. Clara had always been wise, her years of experience giving her a depth of understanding that Maya admired. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was a way to bring in more people without compromising the heart of what they had started. Before Maya could respond, Alice spoke up. "I've been thinking about it too, and I agree with Clara. I've seen so many people who are struggling, people who need a place like this, but who don't even know it exists. If we could just find a way to help them, maybe it wouldn't be so hard for all of us." Maya looked at Alice, who had been so reserved in the past. The vulnerability in her voice made Maya pause. Alice had never been one to openly share her feelings, yet here she was, offering up an idea that was just as difficult for her to express as it was for Maya to hear. "Okay," Maya said finally, her voice softer. "Maybe we need to think about this a little differently. We don't have to take outside funding to reach more people, but maybe we can create a network, a way for others to start their own groups or join us without changing the core of what we're doing." George, who had been quiet up until now, cleared his throat. "You know, when I first walked in here, I didn't think I belonged. I thought I was too old, too far gone. But you made me feel like I mattered, Maya, like my story was worth telling. That's why I keep coming back. Whatever we do, let's make sure that never changes." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had no idea how much the group had meant to George, but hearing him speak so openly, sharing his vulnerable feelings, was a reminder of just how important their work was. "You're right, George," Maya said quietly. "Whatever happens, the most important thing is that everyone who walks through that door knows they matter. We don't want to lose that." The group sat in silence for a moment, each person reflecting on the weight of what had been said. Maya could feel the tension from earlier in the week starting to lift, replaced by something new, hope. Clara broke the silence with a smile. "Well, I think we've all said what's on our hearts. Now, who's ready to share their story?" One by one, each person took their turn, sharing something they had never told anyone before. Clara spoke about the time she had been forced to leave her hometown as a young woman and start over, alone. Alice shared the pain of a recent breakup, the loneliness that came with it, and how she was learning to rebuild herself. George spoke about the fear he'd had of aging, of losing his place in the world, and how he was slowly learning to embrace the new chapter of his life. And then it was Maya's turn. She hadn't planned to speak, but as she listened to the others, she felt the weight of her own vulnerability, her own fear of failure and uncertainty. "I've been struggling," she began, her voice wavering at first. "I'm afraid that in trying to help, I might lose what makes this group special. I'm afraid that I'll let everyone down." The room fell quiet as everyone turned their gaze to her, their eyes filled with understanding. Clara gave her a reassuring nod. "Maya, you're not alone in feeling that way, but you're doing something beautiful here. Just keep listening to us, to what we need, and you'll know what to do." Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her as the group embraced her honesty. She had been holding on to that fear for weeks, thinking she had to have all the answers. But now, sitting with these people who had become her second family, she realized that she didn't have to do it alone. They were in this together. As the meeting came to a close, Maya looked around the room, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't expected to find. Whatever came next, she knew one thing for sure. This group, these people, were enough. They were all enough. Have you ever been afraid of losing something important by trying to make it grow? How did you handle that fear? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. The following week felt like a new chapter for Maya and the group. After their heart-to-heart conversation the previous Saturday, Maya found herself with a renewed sense of purpose. The air in the room was lighter, the tension from Marcus Stevens' visit now a distant memory. The members of the group seemed more connected than ever, their stories flowing more freely. Maya couldn't help but smile as she looked around the room. Clara, Alice, George, and the others were settling into their familiar spots. There was a warmth here that Maya hadn't realized she was missing until now. Despite the uncertainty about the future, this feeling of belonging was something worth protecting. "Hey, Maya," Alice called out, her voice excited. Maya turned to see Alice holding a small envelope in her hand. Maya raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Alice grinned, her eyes sparkling. "I got a letter today. It's for you." Maya walked over, her curiosity piqued. Alice handed her the envelope, which had no return address. It was simple, plain white, with her name written on the front in neat, bold handwriting. Maya tore it open, wondering who could have sent it. Inside, there was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the words written in elegant script. "Maya, I have been following the work you've been doing with the group. What you've built is remarkable. It's rare to find people who truly care, who create a space for vulnerability and growth without asking for anything in return. I wanted to let you know that your efforts have not gone unnoticed. Sometimes, the most meaningful impact is the one that is made quietly, without fanfare. I've been moved by your story and your mission, and I think you'll be pleased to know that I'm in a position to help you take your work to the next level without losing the soul of what you've created. If you're willing to consider it, I would love to sit down and discuss how we can collaborate." Best. Marcus Stevens. Maya felt a rush of emotions hit her all at once. Confusion, skepticism, and a strange sense of curiosity. Marcus had sent this letter? After their conversation last week, she hadn't expected to hear from him again, let alone in such a personal manner. Alice leaned over her shoulder, reading the letter with her. "Well, that's interesting." Maya slowly folded the letter back up, her mind racing. Was this some sort of manipulation? Or had Marcus truly reconsidered his approach? His words were respectful, but the fact that he reached out again after their last conversation made Maya feel uneasy. What did he really want? "I'm not sure how I feel about this," Maya said quietly, her voice uncertain. "It's one thing to turn down an offer in person, but now this? It feels different." "I can see why you'd feel that way," Alice said thoughtfully. "But it's also possible that he respects what you're doing here more than you think. Maybe he's just trying to offer help without compromising your group." Maya chewed on that idea, looking down at the letter in her hands. The possibility of getting more support, of making the group even stronger, was appealing. But at what cost? Could they truly keep their core values intact if outside help started to become part of the equation? The door to the meeting room opened then, and George walked in, followed by Clara. Seeing the look on Maya's face, Clara raised an eyebrow. "What's going on, Maya? You look like you've seen a ghost." Maya glanced at the letter in her hand before tucking it into her bag. "I just got a letter from Marcus Stevens," she explained. "He wants to meet again. He says he respects what we're doing here and that he wants to help us take it to the next level." The room fell silent for a moment, and then George spoke up. "I've been thinking about that man too. He means well, I think. But sometimes, when people want to help, they're not always asking for the right reasons. What's his real angle?" "That's exactly what I'm wondering," Maya replied. "It feels like he's trying to push us into something we're not ready for. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he really does just want to help." Clara's eyes softened. "Maya, no one can make the decision for you. But remember, you've built something here. This group isn't about the money or the recognition. It's about people, about connection. Whatever decision you make, don't forget that." Maya nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude toward Clara. She knew the group meant the world to her. Each person who walked through the door was a part of this growing family. But now, faced with a new challenge, Maya realized that her decisions had far-reaching consequences. The balance between growth and preservation was delicate, and she couldn't afford to lose sight of what really mattered. As the meeting continued, Maya's mind drifted back to the letter. She couldn't shake the thought that perhaps Marcus had a point. Maybe there was a way to help more people, to offer the group's support to even more lives without compromising the integrity of what they had built. But could she trust him? And if she did, what would that mean for everyone in the room? If you were in Maya's position, would you consider meeting with Marcus again? Or would you stick with your original decision to keep the group as it is? Why? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Maya sat at her desk, staring at the letter from Marcus Stevens. The invitation was clear. He wanted to meet in person to discuss how they could collaborate and help the group grow. Part of her felt conflicted about what to do, while another part was curious to hear what Marcus had to offer, curious if he truly had their best interests at heart. She glanced at the clock on the wall. The meeting was set for later that afternoon at a small cafe downtown. She had debated calling it off, but there was something about the tone of his letter, respectful, professional, that made her think this conversation might be worth having. What if this was the opportunity she'd been waiting for? What if Marcus had figured out a way to help them grow without losing the essence of what they had built? After a quick meeting with the group where she didn't mention Marcus's letter, Maya grabbed her bag and left the office. The cafe was only a few blocks away, and as she walked, she tried to keep her mind focused, not on the meeting, but on the mission. Her mission. The reason she started this group in the first place. When Maya arrived at the cafe, she found Marcus already seated at a corner table. He was dressed in a dark jacket, his glasses perched on the edge of his nose, and he was scanning through a tablet. He didn't notice her approach at first, and when he did, he stood up with a warm, welcoming smile. "Maya, it's good to see you," he said, extending a hand. His voice was smooth, confident, but there was something in his eyes, a glimmer of sincerity that she hadn't expected. Maya shook his hand, her pulse quickening. "Thank you for meeting with me." "Of course," Marcus replied, motioning for her to sit. "I know you've been busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk." As Maya took her seat, she tried to remain calm, trying not to let her nerves show. She needed to hear him out, but she couldn't ignore the gut feeling that had been growing inside her ever since she read the letter. Something didn't feel entirely right. "So," she began, trying to sound confident, "what is it you want to talk about?" Marcus set his tablet down on the table and leaned forward, his tone now more serious. "I've been following your group's progress closely, Maya. What you've built here is impressive. People are clearly benefiting from the support and community you've created. I believe in what you're doing, and I think with the right resources, you could reach even more people. There's potential here, potential to do something far larger." Maya listened closely, but her mind was already racing. More people? Larger? She hadn't started this group to expand into some big organization. She had no desire to let the group become something impersonal. "I appreciate that," she said carefully, "but I've worked hard to keep this group small and intimate. The relationships here matter. It's not just about numbers or growth for the sake of growth." Marcus nodded, as if he had anticipated her response. "I understand completely, Maya, and I agree with you. But let me ask you this. How many people do you think are out there, people who need this kind of support, who need this kind of connection, but have no way of finding it? There are thousands, maybe even millions, of people who could benefit from what you're doing. And while the intimacy of your group is wonderful, it's also limiting." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. She could see where this was going. He wanted to expand the group. He wanted to bring in more people, more resources. He didn't want to change the mission, but he certainly wanted to change the scale. "I don't want to lose what makes this work," she said, her voice firm. "The heart of it, the personal connection, the trust." Marcus's eyes softened. "I don't want you to lose that either. And that's why I think I can help. What I'm offering is not a takeover. It's a partnership, a chance for you to keep doing what you love, but with the resources you need to take it further, to reach more people who are out there, waiting for something like this. I can offer you financial support, the ability to scale up, to have a larger impact, without changing the essence of what you've built." Maya took a deep breath, trying to process everything he was saying. He was right, in some ways. There were so many people who needed support, people who were struggling just like the group members. But was it worth risking the group's identity to help them? "I don't know," Maya admitted, looking down at her hands. "It feels like a huge decision. What if expanding means losing the very thing that makes this group special?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. That's a fair concern, Maya. But what if it doesn't have to be that way? What if you could grow without losing what you care about? What if you could offer more people what you've offered to this group without sacrificing the personal touch? Maya felt a twinge of doubt, but also a flicker of hope. Could it be possible? Could she grow the group without losing its heart? She looked up at Marcus. How would this partnership work, exactly? Marcus smiled, as though he had been waiting for her to ask that question. That's what I want to explain. I've built relationships with several people in the nonprofit sector. People who have the same values you do. They're all about supporting communities, not just funding them for the sake of growth. Together, we can create a model that helps more people without sacrificing the quality or intimacy you've worked so hard to maintain. Maya paused, feeling the weight of the decision before her. Could she trust him? Could she trust herself to make the right choice? Let me think about it, Maya said finally. This is a lot to process, and I need to talk to the group about it. Marcus nodded understandingly. Of course. Take your time. I'm here when you're ready to talk further. Maya stood up, shaking his hand once again. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Marcus. I look forward to hearing from you, Maya, he said with a smile. As Maya walked out of the cafe, the weight of the decision felt heavier than ever. She had wanted to help others, but she hadn't expected it to come at such a cost. Could she really grow this group without losing what it stood for? The answers weren't clear. But one thing was certain. The path forward wouldn't be easy. If you were Maya, how would you decide whether to take Marcus's offer or stick with the group as it is? What factors would you consider most important? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Maya couldn't shake the feeling of uncertainty after her meeting with Marcus. The promise of growth, the chance to reach more people was tempting, but was it worth it? She walked home that evening, her mind filled with questions. Every corner she turned seemed to remind her of the group, the people who had trusted her, the work they had done together. She couldn't just decide on her own. This wasn't just her decision. It was their future at stake. The next morning, Maya called for an emergency meeting. She needed the group's input. As much as she valued their support, she also knew this decision would shape the direction of their work, and she couldn't carry the weight of it alone. She gathered everyone in the small conference room, the same room where they had celebrated their early successes. The energy was different today, more serious, more focused. Everyone was present: Clara, George, Alice, and a few other key members. Maya had already explained a bit over the phone, but now it was time for the full discussion. As they all took their seats, Maya felt the familiar rush of responsibility, but also a sense of relief. She wasn't alone in this. I received a letter from Marcus Stevens yesterday, Maya began, her voice steady but laced with hesitation. And I met with him after. He wants to help us expand, to provide financial support and connections that could help grow this group, help us reach more people. She paused, letting the words sink in. There was a moment of silence as everyone processed the news. George was the first to speak, his tone measured but intense. Marcus Stevens, he said slowly. That name rings a bell. Isn't he the one behind all those big donations to nonprofit organizations? The philanthropist guy? Maya nodded. Yes, but he wants to partner with us, not just give us money. He believes in what we're doing here and thinks we could make a bigger impact with more resources. He's offered to help us grow, but Maya hesitated, choosing her next words carefully. But he also wants us to consider scaling up, to open ourselves to a larger community, maybe even offer services outside the group we have now. Alice leaned forward, her expression one of quiet curiosity. And what do you think, Maya? What's your gut feeling about all of this? Maya sighed. Honestly, I'm torn. The idea of reaching more people, helping more people, is really tempting. But at the same time, I'm worried that expanding could change the heart of what we've built here. We've worked so hard to create a space that's personal, that feels safe. I don't want that to be lost. Clara, who had been quietly listening, finally spoke. Maya, I know how much this group means to you. It means a lot to all of us. But sometimes, opportunities like this don't come around very often. If Marcus's offer is genuine, maybe it's worth exploring. We wouldn't have to take everything he offers. Maybe we can set clear boundaries and keep what's important to us. Maybe this is how we make the difference we've been dreaming about. There was a thoughtful pause around the table. George leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, clearly deep in thought. Clara's got a point, George said. But we have to be careful. Once we start taking money from people like Marcus Stevens, things change. We don't know his long-term motives. What happens if he doesn't like the way we run things, or decides to pull out? What happens to the people we've built trust with? I don't want anyone to feel like we've sold out. Maya could feel the weight of his words, and the tension in the room grew thick. The idea of selling out was something she had thought about herself. What if Marcus's offer came with strings attached, strings that would eventually strangle the group's very purpose? Alice spoke again, her voice quieter this time. But what if we could take his help without compromising who we are? What if we can create a partnership that lets us keep our values and grow? We've already done so much with so little. What could we do with more? Maya turned her attention to Clara, who had been listening intently. Clara, who had always been the voice of reason, the one who helped her see the bigger picture when she was stuck in her own head. I think it's worth having a conversation, Clara said slowly, but it has to be on our terms. We can't let the group lose its soul for the sake of growth. We've already shown that this group can make a difference. Let's not forget why we started this in the first place. Maya felt a sense of clarity wash over her. Clara was right. This wasn't about abandoning what they had. It was about protecting it while finding a way to help more people. If Marcus was truly genuine, then maybe there was a way to navigate this carefully. I agree, Maya said, her voice stronger now. If we're going to consider Marcus's offer, we need to make sure we keep control. We need to define the boundaries. But I can't make this decision alone. This group is as much yours as it is mine. If we move forward, we move forward together. There was a murmur of agreement around the table. Maya could feel the strength in the room. They were a team. Nothing would change that. And if there was a way to expand without losing what they had, then it was worth considering. Maya took a deep breath. All right, I'll arrange another meeting with Marcus. We'll set the terms, and we'll make sure we keep the heart of what we've built. But no matter what, we stay true to ourselves. The group nodded, their expressions a mixture of resolve and hope. For the first time since receiving Marcus's letter, Maya felt a sense of peace. This was the right way forward. Together, they would decide what was best for everyone. What would you do if you were in Maya's shoes? Would you be willing to expand? Or would you stick to what you know? What factors would influence your decision the most? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The next few days passed in a blur of meetings and phone calls. Maya knew that the group had made its decision. If they were going to take Marcus's offer, they would do it on their terms. The challenge now was to figure out exactly what those terms would be. She couldn't afford to be naive. She had to ensure that they didn't lose control over the very thing that made their group unique. Maya arranged a second meeting with Marcus at the same cafe where they had met before. This time, she wasn't just there to listen. She was there to negotiate. As she walked into the cafe, she saw Marcus already seated at the same corner table, his ever-present tablet in front of him. He looked up as she entered, a welcoming smile spreading across his face. But Maya could sense something different in the air. Today, she wasn't going to be swayed by charm alone. Good to see you again, Maya, Marcus said, standing to shake her hand. Thanks for meeting me, Maya replied. She sat down across from him, her posture straight, her eyes fixed on him. I've had some time to think, and the group has discussed your offer. We're open to the idea of partnering, but there are some conditions that we need to make clear before moving forward. Marcus's smile faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly recovered, his expression attentive. I'm listening. What conditions do you have in mind? Maya took a deep breath and laid out the group's terms, speaking with the confidence she had gained in recent days. First, we need to maintain control over the direction of the group. No decisions will be made without the input and approval of the core members. We can't have outside influence shaping the group in ways that go against our values. Marcus nodded. I understand. You'll have complete autonomy over your operations. I'm not here to dictate how you run things, only to offer support where needed. Maya didn't let up. Second, we won't be compromising the size or intimacy of the group. We want to grow, yes, but we won't sacrifice the personal relationships and trust that have been built. Any expansion will be gradual, and it will be based on the needs of the current members. Of course, Marcus said quickly. That's reasonable. We can take a measured approach to growth. I won't push for anything faster than you're comfortable with. Maya's gaze sharpened. And third, any financial support or donations must align with the group's values. We won't accept money that comes with strings attached or that would force us to change our mission. We'll only accept funding that respects our integrity. Marcus's face remained composed, but Maya saw a brief flicker of something in his eyes. A challenge, perhaps, or just the awareness that these were not conditions he could easily bypass. He took a slow breath, then replied, I can agree to all of that. It's not an issue. Maya nodded, still not entirely convinced. She was trying to read him, trying to figure out whether he was being genuine or if there was something he wasn't saying. The stakes were too high to trust her gut alone. She needed more. And what exactly are you offering? I need to know how much involvement you're expecting and what resources you can provide. Marcus paused, then set his tablet aside, giving her his full attention. I've built relationships with several philanthropic organizations and individual donors who believe in what you're doing. I can connect you with them, provide funding for the resources you need to grow, whether it's for space, outreach, or even technology. I also have connections in the nonprofit sector that could help you streamline operations, make everything more efficient. Maya weighed his words carefully. The offer was tempting. The chance to grow without compromising the core mission sounded ideal, but there was a nagging voice in the back of her mind warning her not to take everything at face value. She didn't want to end up beholden to someone like Marcus Stevens. How will this affect the members? She asked. We don't want people to feel like they're part of something that's being taken over. It has to be clear that the group's mission and identity won't change. Marcus's gaze softened, and for the first time in their conversation, he seemed almost vulnerable. I get it, Maya, and I don't want that to happen either. I'm not here to take over. I want to help you reach more people, that's all. If we can keep the group focused on its mission and values, then I'm happy to let you do things your way. My involvement will be as little or as much as you need. Maya didn't respond right away. She was calculating, weighing the pros and cons. Marcus was offering something that could really help, but she also knew that money and resources could change a group. Power dynamics shifted when money was involved, no matter how well-meaning the donors were. Okay, she said finally, but before anything moves forward, we'll need to draft an agreement. One that outlines these terms clearly, in writing. We need to protect ourselves and the group, make sure everything is spelled out. Marcus smiled, his expression relieved. Absolutely. I think that's a wise decision. They spent the next hour discussing the specifics. How much funding they would receive, what kind of connections Marcus could help them make, and how they would maintain the group's independence. It was a delicate balance, but Maya felt more confident than when she had walked in. She had set the terms. She had made sure the group's interests were protected. As the meeting drew to a close, Marcus stood and extended his hand. Maya, I think we've got a deal. I'm looking forward to working with you and your team. Maya shook his hand firmly, her mind still racing, but for the first time in days, she felt a sense of peace about the decision. There was still a lot to figure out, but she had the group's support, and they would move forward together. Thank you, Marcus, she said. We'll be in touch soon to finalize the details. As she left the cafe, Maya felt the weight of the decision lift just a little. She hadn't let the group lose its soul, and that, she realized, was the most important thing. What do you think about Maya's approach to the negotiation? Did she make the right decision, or do you think she should have been more cautious? Share your thoughts below. The weeks following the negotiation with Marcus Stevens were filled with busy preparations and cautious optimism. Maya and the group were still processing the magnitude of the decision they had made. The idea of expanding, growing, and helping more people was exciting, but it also came with its own set of fears. They had established something strong, something personal, and now they had to ensure they didn't lose that essence. The group's first step was to draft a formal agreement with Marcus. They needed to lay everything out clearly, defining boundaries, expectations, and the ways in which Marcus's involvement would unfold. The contract would serve as a safeguard, a document that protected the integrity of the group while opening the door for new opportunities. Maya sat in the small conference room, staring at the draft of the agreement on her laptop. She scrolled through the details carefully, reading each clause. There were provisions for funding, but they were framed in a way that allowed the group to retain full control. There were limits on Marcus's involvement, making it clear that he could offer support but not dictate decisions. For the first time since the meeting, Maya felt a sense of relief. This was a partnership on their terms. But as the group's legal advisor, George, went over the document with her, she couldn't shake the sense that something was missing. The paper had all the right words, the right clauses, but was it really enough to protect what they had built? They had to trust Marcus, but trust didn't always equate to security. "Do you feel good about it?" George asked, looking up from his notes. His eyes were tired, but there was a quiet determination in them. "Everything seems in order." Maya hesitated, her finger hovering over the mouse. "I think so, but I can't shake the feeling that there's something we're not seeing, something we're missing." "You're overthinking it," George said, leaning back in his chair. "We've been thorough. The terms are clear, and Marcus is genuinely interested in helping. If we hold to the conditions we set, we'll be fine." Maya sighed and closed the laptop. "You're probably right. I just need a little more time to process all of this. It's a lot to take in." George gave her a reassuring smile. "I get it, but remember, you're not doing this alone. We're all in this together." Maya nodded, grateful for his words. She needed this reminder more than ever. There had been moments when she doubted her decision, moments when she wondered if they were heading down a dangerous path. But as George had said, they were doing it together. And they were being careful. They were setting boundaries, protecting the group, and ensuring they wouldn't lose what had made them special in the first place. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She lay in bed, her mind racing with thoughts of the future. What would it look like if they succeeded? What would it feel like to see their group helping people all over the city, or even the country? She had always dreamed of making a difference, but now the dream seemed closer than ever before. The next morning, after hours of tossing and turning, Maya sat down with her coffee and finally sent the agreement to Marcus. It was time to move forward. The contract was signed and returned within hours, and just like that, the first step had been taken. Do you think Maya was right to take her time with the agreement? Do you believe it's important to carefully consider every detail before moving forward in a partnership like this? Share your thoughts with us below. It had been 2 weeks since the agreement with Marcus was signed. The group was already feeling the effects of the new partnership. Donations were flowing in, and Marcus's connections had opened doors that Maya had never imagined possible. There were offers for office space, resources for outreach programs, and even technology that could help streamline their operations. Everything seemed to be falling into place. But with every success came the inevitable challenges. As the group began to grow, so did the pressures. Members of the group who had been there from the beginning were starting to feel the weight of the changes. Some were excited, eager to see what the future held, while others were hesitant, unsure of what this new phase would mean for their tight-knit community. Maya could sense the tension in the air. One afternoon, Maya sat down with Tasha and Eric in the small, familiar meeting room that had once been their main hub. The room was cluttered with papers, a whiteboard covered in notes, and the hum of conversations from the other members who were busy at work. The energy had shifted. It was no longer just about the few of them anymore. It was about something bigger, something that was beginning to feel a little out of their control. "I'm starting to feel like we're losing the heart of the group," Tasha said, her voice low. She had always been the most grounded of the group, and Maya trusted her instincts. "The more resources we get, the more I feel like we're drifting away from why we started this in the first place." Eric nodded in agreement, his brow furrowed. "Yeah, it's like we're running a business now, not a community." Maya listened, her fingers tapping on the edge of the table. She had been feeling the same way, but hearing it from Tasha and Eric made it real. They weren't just worried about the group's future. They were scared that the soul of it was in danger. "We knew this would be a risk," Maya said after a long pause. "The more we grow, the more we have to adapt. But we can't lose sight of who we are. We can do both. We can grow and still stay true to our mission." Tasha gave her a doubtful look. "But how? Every day it feels like there's more pressure to change, to be something different. I don't know if I can keep up with it." Maya sat back in her chair, her mind racing. This was their first test, their first real challenge. How could she balance the promise of growth and opportunity with the need to preserve the values that had brought them together? I'll tell you how, Maya said, her voice firm. We stay true to our core. We do it our way. We make sure every decision aligns with our values, and we always put the people we serve first. It's up to us to lead by example. If we lose our way, then all of this, she gestured around the room, won't matter. Eric leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. But what if Marcus doesn't like the way we're doing things? What if he pushes for something that goes against what we believe? Maya met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. Then we stand firm. We have the agreement. He can't push us to do anything we don't want to do. And if it comes to that, we walk away. We're not doing this just for the money or the resources. We're doing it to make a difference. And if we lose sight of that, then it's not worth it. Tasha seemed to relax a little, the tension in her shoulders easing. You really think we can do that? I know we can, Maya said with a conviction she didn't even fully realize she had until the words left her mouth. We have something special here. We just have to protect it. That afternoon, they gathered the rest of the group for a meeting. Maya knew it was time to address the growing concerns head-on. They couldn't let fear drive the narrative. They needed to confront the changes and ensure that everyone felt included in the next steps. As the group settled into their seats, Maya stood at the front, her hands resting on the table. I know a lot of you are feeling uneasy about the direction things are going. The growth, the new resources, it's a lot. But I want you to know that we're still the same group we were when we started. Our mission hasn't changed, and we're going to make sure it never does. She paused, letting her words sink in. We will keep doing the work that matters. We'll make sure our decisions are guided by our values, not by the pressure to grow too fast or be something we're not. And if ever it feels like we're losing our way, we'll stop, take a step back, and reassess. This is our group, and we're in this together. The room was silent for a moment, and then slowly, people began to nod. Maya could see the tension in their faces start to ease, just a little. It wasn't all fixed, not yet, but it was a start. They were all on the same page. Thank you, Tasha said, her voice soft. I think that's exactly what we needed to hear. Eric smiled, his usual skepticism replaced by a cautious optimism. Yeah, I think we're going to be okay. Maya took a deep breath, feeling a sense of relief wash over her. They had faced their first real test, and they had passed. But she knew the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more challenges, more tough decisions. But with the group united, with their mission clear, she believed they could weather any storm. As the meeting wrapped up and the members filed out of the room, Maya sat back in her chair, a small smile on her face. She had faced the fear head-on, and in doing so, she had strengthened the very thing that made their group unique, their shared vision. How do you think Maya handled the concerns of the group? Do you agree with her approach to staying true to their values while navigating the pressures of growth? Share your thoughts below. As the weeks passed, the group's efforts began to gain momentum. They had managed to keep their core values intact, and their mission was starting to spread to new areas. The number of people they were reaching was growing, and so was the excitement. Yet, despite the outward success, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something unpredictable, something that could either propel them forward or tear them apart. It wasn't just the work that weighed on her. It was the growing divide between the early members of the group and the new arrivals, those who were brought in by the partnership with Marcus. As the group expanded, it became harder to maintain the tight-knit, familial atmosphere that had been the foundation of their success. The original members, Maya included, had always been able to count on each other. They were a team, a family in every sense of the word. But now, as more people joined, some of the newer faces felt like strangers, and the familiar warmth of their unity started to fray. Maya had spent the last few days buried in work, trying to keep everything running smoothly, but she found herself growing more and more isolated. The meetings were getting bigger, the decisions more complex. She used to be able to walk into a room and feel the pulse of the group, to know exactly what people were thinking. Now, she found herself wondering if she still understood what they wanted or needed. One afternoon, as the team gathered for a brainstorming session, Maya found herself zoning out. She was listening to Tasha and Eric discuss the upcoming fundraising event, but her mind kept drifting back to her doubts. Was she really still in control? Were they still the same group, or had they changed without even realizing it? Hey, Maya. Tasha's voice pulled her from her thoughts. Do you think we should take a bigger risk with the event? Maybe try to bring in some higher-profile guests. We could get more exposure that way. Maya looked up, meeting Tasha's eyes. The question seemed simple enough, but Maya hesitated. I don't know, she replied slowly. It's a big risk. What if it doesn't go as planned? What if we lose the connection we have with the people we're actually trying to help? Tasha seemed to sense the unease in Maya's voice. She studied her friend for a moment before speaking again, her tone more gentle this time. Maya, I know you're worried about losing that personal touch, but you can't let fear hold us back. We've always played it safe because it felt comfortable. But if we want to really make a difference, we need to take some chances. Eric nodded in agreement, his expression thoughtful. Tasha's right. We can't keep doing things the same way and expect to get different results. The world is changing, Maya, and we need to adapt. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their words. She knew they were right. Part of her had always been afraid of losing control, of letting go of the intimate, close-knit group that had formed. But she also knew that the world they were working in wasn't static. Things were changing, and if they didn't change with them, they risked being left behind. But the thought of sacrificing that personal connection still didn't sit well with her. I get it, she said after a long pause. I know we need to grow, but I just don't want us to lose sight of who we are. Our work is meaningful because it's personal. We can't let that get lost in the process. Tasha and Eric exchanged a glance, and for a moment, there was a silence that hung in the air, unsettling and heavy. It was as though they all knew the same truth, but weren't quite ready to confront it. Finally, Tasha spoke up. I don't think we'll lose that connection if we do it right. We just have to make sure we stay true to the heart of what we're doing. Bigger events don't have to mean bigger egos or losing the people we care about. We just need to be intentional. Maya looked at her two closest friends, the ones who had been with her from the very beginning. She trusted them, but she still felt that tightness in her chest. It wasn't just about the event. It was about the future. It was about the choices they would have to make, the risks they would have to take. She had always been the one to take charge, to steer the ship, but lately, she felt like she was losing her grip on the wheel. I don't know if I'm ready for all of this, she admitted quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. What if I make the wrong decision? What if I lead us down the wrong path? Tasha reached across the table and placed a hand on hers. Maya, we're in this together. We've got your back. You don't have to make every decision alone. Eric nodded, his face softened. And remember, not every decision has to be perfect. What matters is that we're learning as we go. We're not doing this to be perfect. We're doing this to make a difference. And you've already done that. Maya felt a surge of gratitude for her friends. They had always been there to remind her of her strength, even when she couldn't see it herself. But the doubt still lingered in her chest. She had led them this far, but was she ready to keep leading them into the unknown? That evening, after the meeting, Maya walked alone along the streets of the city. The lights twinkled in the distance, and the night air was cool and refreshing. She had always loved walking through the city at night, when the world seemed quieter, more peaceful. It gave her the space she needed to think, to breathe, and to sort through the clutter in her mind. As she walked, her phone buzzed in her pocket. It was a message from Marcus. Marcus Stevens, I've been thinking. We need to talk about scaling faster. I've got some ideas that could move this thing to the next level. Let me know when you're free. Maya stared at the message, her stomach twisting in knots. She had known this moment would come. The pressure to scale, to expand faster, to take risks that could potentially jeopardize everything they'd worked for. She knew Marcus had his own agenda, his own vision for the future. But was that the future she wanted? What would you do if you were Maya? Would you take the risk to scale up quickly? Or would you hold on to the personal connections that have made the group so successful? Let us know your thoughts below. The weight of the decision loomed over Maya as she stared at Marcus's message. It wasn't just about scaling up quickly. It was about who they would become if they took his advice. Marcus had been a crucial ally, someone who brought resources and connections they could never have accessed otherwise. But the more she thought about his suggestion, the more she realized that his vision was far different from the one she and the group had shared. Could they afford to change so drastically? Could they grow without losing the very essence of what made their mission so powerful? She walked slowly through the streets, trying to quiet the whirlwind in her mind. By the time she returned to the office, it was late, and the team had already wrapped up for the day. But Maya knew that the next morning, the conversation would come. She would have to face Marcus, face the tension between the growth they desperately needed and the personal, heart-centered approach that had always guided them. As she sat down at her desk, her phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Eric. "Hey." Eric's voice was warm, but there was an underlying tension to it. "We need to talk." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She knew that tone all too well. "What's going on?" "I think it's time we have a real conversation about Marcus," Eric said, his voice low. "And about where we're headed." Maya sighed, leaning back in her chair. She could feel the fatigue of the past few weeks settling in her bones. "I've been thinking about that too. We can't just keep ignoring the fact that we're changing," Eric continued. "I know you're trying to hold it all together, but the pressure is starting to crack. People are worried, and I'm worried too. What's the next step? What does success even look like anymore?" Maya closed her eyes for a moment, taking in his words. He was right. Things were changing, and they couldn't pretend otherwise. But what if they didn't want the kind of success Marcus was offering? What if their vision was bigger than just growing as fast as possible? "We're at a crossroads, Eric," Maya said finally. "If we keep going down this path, it might not be the group we started with anymore. It might become something else entirely." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Eric spoke again, his voice firm but compassionate. "I know, but that's the thing. Maybe we have to make a choice. We can't keep trying to play both sides. Either we commit to growing and making a bigger impact, or we stay small, stay personal, but risk not reaching the people who need us most." Maya felt a lump form in her throat. She had always known that the journey ahead wouldn't be easy, but the weight of the decision now felt more pressing than ever. How could she reconcile the need for growth with her desire to maintain the heart of what they had built? Could they do both? "I'll talk to Marcus," Maya said after a long silence. "We'll figure this out." The next morning, Maya arrived early at the office. She sat at her desk, scrolling through the endless emails and messages, but her mind kept returning to the looming conversation with Marcus. She couldn't shake the feeling that whatever decision she made next would set the course for everything that followed. Just after noon, Marcus arrived for their scheduled meeting. He looked as polished and composed as ever, his sharp suit and confident demeanor a stark contrast to the anxious energy that had settled over Maya. As he entered her office, he gave her a quick smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've been thinking about our conversation, I can tell," Marcus said, taking a seat across from her. Maya nodded, folding her hands in her lap. "I have, and I think we need to have an honest conversation about what's next." Marcus raised an eyebrow, leaning forward slightly. "That's what I like to hear. So, what's your plan?" "You've got a lot of potential here, Maya. A lot of untapped opportunity." Maya hesitated for a moment before speaking. "That's exactly it, Marcus. I'm not sure that I want to tap into every opportunity just because it's there. I know we need to grow, but I don't want to lose what makes this group special. We've always been about personal connections, about being there for the people who need us. I don't know if we can maintain that and scale at the speed you're suggesting." Marcus leaned back in his chair, clearly surprised by her response. "I get it. You're attached to the original vision. But you have to understand, growth means reaching more people. It means creating something bigger than just your small group. It's about impact, Maya. And impact requires resources, power, and influence. If you're going to make a real difference, you can't stay small forever." Maya's heart pounded in her chest as his words hit home. She had heard this argument before. She knew that Marcus was right, in some ways. Growth could lead to greater impact. But she also knew the truth of what made their work so meaningful, the deep, personal connections that couldn't be scaled without sacrificing their essence. "I don't want to be just another organization," Maya said, her voice stronger now. "I want us to stay authentic. We can't lose the soul of this just to be bigger." Marcus studied her for a long moment, his eyes calculating. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. I get it. I understand your concerns. But let me be clear, you can't have it both ways. If you want to make a real difference, you have to be willing to take risks, to grow faster, to reach more people. Or, you stay small, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll always be limited. The silence between them stretched for a long moment. Maya could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, suffocating her. She wasn't sure what to say anymore. Part of her wanted to take the risk, to leap into the unknown and trust that they could handle it. But another part of her was terrified of losing what they had worked so hard to build. Let's think about it, Maya said finally, breaking the silence. I need time. We all need time. Marcus nodded, clearly not thrilled with the delay but understanding. I can give you that. But just know, time is the one thing you don't have much of. We're moving forward, with or without you. As he left the room, Maya sat back in her chair, her mind reeling. The crossroads had arrived, and she had no idea which path to take. What would you do in Maya's position? Would you prioritize keeping things small and personal, or would you take the risk and scale up for greater impact? Share your thoughts below. Maya spent the next few days feeling like she was walking a tightrope. The conversation with Marcus weighed heavily on her mind, and she couldn't shake the pressure of the decision ahead. The more she thought about it, the more it seemed like there was no easy way out. On one hand, the potential for growth was undeniable. More people reached, more resources, and a bigger impact. On the other hand, there was the risk of losing the very thing that had made their mission so special. She knew she couldn't make the decision alone. This wasn't just about her. It was about the group, the people who had believed in her vision from the very beginning. She had always prided herself on being a leader who listened, who understood the importance of collaboration. Now, more than ever, she needed that. The next morning, Maya called an emergency meeting. She wanted to bring everyone together, to open up a dialogue about the crossroads they were facing. She had to know where they stood, what they were willing to risk, and what they valued most. The team gathered in the conference room, the air thick with anticipation. Tasha, Eric, and the others all sat around the table, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Maya took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. I've been thinking a lot about our conversation with Marcus, Maya began, her voice steady but filled with uncertainty. And I know we're at a turning point. We can continue doing things the way we have, keeping it personal, keeping it small, or we can take a bigger risk and scale up, reach more people, and make a bigger impact. But I need to know where you all stand. What do you want? What's important to you? There was a long pause as everyone exchanged looks. Finally, it was Eric who spoke first. I've been thinking about this too, Maya, he said, his voice calm but firm, and I think we're all feeling the pressure. Marcus is right about one thing. If we don't grow, we risk staying small, staying in our comfort zone. But I'm with you. I don't want to lose what we've built either. I think we have to find a balance, something in between. We can't just leap into something without thinking it through. Tasha nodded in agreement. Exactly. We can't lose sight of the people we're helping. They're the reason we do this. But at the same time, we can't ignore the opportunity in front of us. There's a way to scale without selling out. We just need to be careful. Maya listened intently, feeling the weight of their words. They were right. She didn't want to lose the heart of their mission, but the pressure to grow was undeniable. As the meeting continued, the discussion grew more heated. Everyone had their opinions, their ideas, but no one could seem to agree on the right path forward. It felt like every option came with a sacrifice. Finally, after hours of debate, Maya made a decision. I don't have all the answers, she said, her voice quiet but resolute. But I know one thing. We can't keep waiting. We need to take action, one way or another. We need to decide whether we're going to stay true to ourselves, even if it means moving slower, or if we're going to take the leap and trust that we can handle what comes next. There was a long silence after her words. The room seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for someone to speak up, to voice a solution, a way forward. Maya felt her stomach twist with anxiety, but she stood firm. She couldn't lead them if she wasn't willing to make the tough calls. I know it's not easy, she continued, but I believe in this team, in all of you. And I believe in what we've created. I don't want to lose sight of that, no matter what decision we make. After a moment, Tasha spoke up. We've always been a team, Maya, and no matter what happens, we'll stick together. If we decide to scale, we'll do it the right way. We'll keep our hearts in it. Maya nodded, a small sense of relief washing over her. She knew that whatever path they chose, they would face it together. But the uncertainty was still there. It was the same uncertainty that had plagued her since that conversation with Marcus. Later that evening, as she walked home, Maya found herself replaying the meeting in her head. She felt like she had made progress, but the final decision still hung over her. It was one thing to talk about change. It was another to actually embrace it. When she got home, she found an email from Marcus in her inbox. It was short, to the point, and in a way, more pressing than anything he had said in person. Marcus Stevens, we've waited long enough. If you're serious about making a real impact, we need to move forward. Let me know when you're ready to take the next step. Maya stared at the message, her pulse quickening. This was it, the final push. Marcus wasn't going to wait forever. She sat down at her desk, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. She had no idea how to respond. On one hand, she felt the pull of everything they had worked for, everything they could accomplish by embracing growth. On the other hand, she felt a deep, visceral need to protect the soul of what they had created. What if she said yes? What if she agreed to take the leap? But what if she said no? What if she risked it all to stay true to herself, to the team, and to the people they were serving? Her mind swirled, the decision weighing on her more than she had ever anticipated. She needed time, but time was a luxury she didn't have anymore. Maya sighed, the realization hitting her hard. The crossroads had arrived, and there was no going back. The choice was hers, and whatever she decided, it would change everything. Maya is facing the toughest decision of her journey. If you were in her shoes, what would you do? Would you take the risk and embrace the growth? Or would you protect the core values and stay small? Let us know your thoughts below. The days that followed Maya's conversation with Marcus felt like an endless series of ticking clocks. She was caught between the promise of growth and the fear of losing what she had worked so hard to build. Every conversation seemed to loop back to the same crossroads, and the more she tried to rationalize it, the more uncertain she became. She spent hours walking through the city, trying to clear her mind. The noise of the world around her seemed to drown out her thoughts, but it also brought some clarity. The city, with all its chaos and ambition, was a reflection of what she was facing. A place where things grew rapidly, but often at the cost of something more precious. Was that the kind of impact she wanted to create? Or could there be a way to grow without losing everything that mattered? That night, as Maya sat at her desk reviewing the email from Marcus one last time, a knock on her door interrupted her thoughts. She looked up, surprised to see Tasha standing in the doorway, her face serious but gentle. "Mind if I come in?" Tasha asked, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. "I've been thinking about everything you've been dealing with, and I think we need to talk." Maya nodded, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Of course. I've been losing sleep over this, to be honest." Tasha took a seat, her eyes searching Maya's face. "I know this is hard, and I can see you're torn. But here's the thing. We've built something real here. Something that matters. But you can't keep carrying it all on your own. And you don't have to make this decision alone either." Maya leaned back in her chair, her mind racing. She had known this conversation was coming. The team, as much as they supported her, had to know what was at stake. They had to decide whether they would stand together and face this crossroads or risk falling apart. "I don't know what the right choice is anymore," Maya confessed. "It's like no matter which path I choose, something is going to be lost. If we scale, we risk losing the heart of what we do. But if we stay small, we risk not reaching enough people, not making the kind of impact we could. What if I'm making the wrong choice?" Tasha gave her a small, understanding smile. "Maya, you're not alone in this. The team's behind you, no matter what. We all know how hard you've worked to get us to this point. But I don't think Marcus's vision is the only way forward. Maybe it's about finding our own path, one that lets us grow but also stays true to what we believe in." Maya looked at her, surprised by her words. "You really think we can do that?" Tasha nodded, her gaze unwavering. I do doubt we've always been about finding creative solutions, about doing things differently. Why can't we keep our values while embracing growth? It won't be easy, but I think we can make it work. Maya felt a flicker of hope spark within her. She had always believed that they could do things differently, that they didn't have to follow the traditional path to success. Maybe Tasha was right. Maybe they could find a way to grow without compromising the very soul of their mission. We'll need to be strategic, Maya said slowly, the idea beginning to take shape in her mind. It won't be easy, but I think it's possible. We don't have to take Marcus's route. We can build something that's true to us. We just need to be patient, creative, and committed to making it work. Tasha smiled. Exactly. And we have each other. We'll figure it out, one step at a time. Maya leaned forward, her resolve hardening. She knew it wouldn't be simple. They would face challenges, resistance, and perhaps even failure. But for the first time in days, she felt a sense of clarity. There was a way forward that didn't require them to lose their soul. It would take work, but it was possible. Thank you, Tasha, Maya said quietly. I needed to hear that. I think we can make this work. The next day, Maya called another team meeting. This time, it wasn't just about discussing Marcus's offer. It was about taking control of their own destiny. She explained her thoughts to the group, sharing her conversation with Tasha in the new direction she believed they could take. The team listened intently, their expressions thoughtful but receptive. One by one, they voiced their support for the new vision. A vision that didn't require sacrificing their values to achieve success. They were ready to move forward, but on their own terms. As the meeting came to a close, Maya felt a wave of relief wash over her. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't alone in this decision. The team was behind her, and together, they would navigate the challenges ahead. Later that afternoon, she composed a reply to Marcus's email. Subject: regarding our next steps, Dear Marcus, thank you for your continued interest and support. After much thought and reflection, I've come to a decision regarding the direction we'll be taking. We are grateful for the opportunity to work together, but after considering everything, we've decided to pursue a path that aligns more closely with our values and vision. While we're not ready to take the kind of leap you've proposed, we believe there's a way to grow and make a larger impact while staying true to what we've built. We appreciate the chance to learn from you, but at this time, we're choosing a different route. Thank you again for your support, and we hope to remain in touch. Best. Maya. She hit send, her heart pounding as she did. There was no turning back now. She had made her choice. Maya has made a bold choice, deciding to move forward on her own terms. If you were in her shoes, would you have taken Marcus's offer or created your own path? What do you think is the key to balancing growth and staying true to your values? Share your thoughts below. Maya sat back in her chair, staring at the screen for a long moment after sending the email to Marcus. It was done. The decision had been made, and there was no turning back. But as the weight of the choice settled on her shoulders, a new realization dawned on her. This was only the beginning. She hadn't just made a choice for herself, but for everyone who had invested their time, energy, and passion into this cause. She thought of the team, the volunteers who worked tirelessly to build relationships with the community, the donors who believed in what they were doing, and the people they were helping. They had all taken a leap of faith with her. It wasn't just about keeping the mission intact, it was about setting an example for them too. She was teaching them that sometimes, the hardest thing to do was to walk away from a big opportunity if it didn't align with what you believed in. The team needed to hear this. They needed to know that they hadn't just been part of a decision. They were part of something bigger, something that would define not just their work, but the way they operated in the world. That evening, Maya gathered the team in the same conference room they had met in days earlier. She could see the excitement and curiosity on their faces, but she could also sense the uncertainty in the air. They were all wondering how the decision would affect them moving forward. We've made a choice, Maya began, her voice firm yet calm. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page about what that means. The room quieted, every eye on her. I know this wasn't an easy decision, she continued. And I also know that, for some of you, it might feel like we've just passed up a huge opportunity. But I believe, deep down, that we've chosen the right path. It's not going to be quick or easy, but I promise you, it will be worth it. We're going to grow, but on our terms. And we're going to do it while staying true to the values we've always held close. There was a moment of silence before Tasha spoke up. I know we're all a little nervous about what this means, but I trust you, Maya. I trust that we can make this work. We've always found ways to be creative, to make things happen, even when the odds were stacked against us. Maya smiled, feeling a rush of gratitude for the support. Thank you, Tasha, and I trust all of you. You've been with me through this entire journey, and together, we've built something incredible. Now, we get to shape its future. It's time to start planning our next steps, and that means we need to be strategic. The team nodded, their expressions shifting from uncertainty to determination. Over the next few weeks, Maya and the team worked tirelessly to put their new vision into motion. They started by revisiting the core principles that had driven their work from the very beginning. They spent hours in brainstorming sessions, figuring out ways to increase their impact without compromising their mission. They explored new partnerships that aligned with their values and considered new methods of outreach that could reach a wider audience while keeping their hands on the pulse of the community they served. Despite the challenges, Maya began to feel a sense of excitement. For the first time in a long while, they were charting their own course, without outside pressure, without the need to conform to someone else's idea of success. It wasn't going to be an overnight change, but the foundations were being laid. The first signs of progress came faster than Maya had anticipated. More people reached out to the organization, eager to get involved. Local businesses offered to support their work, not because they had to, but because they genuinely believed in the cause. Volunteers poured in, eager to help in any way they could. As the momentum built, Maya realized just how far they had come. The team had grown stronger, more unified, and more creative. They were doing things their way, and it was working. There was no compromise, no cutting corners. And for the first time, Maya felt truly confident about the future. But just as things seemed to be falling into place, a new challenge arose. One morning, Maya received an unexpected call from Marcus. His tone was polite but clipped. "I see you've decided to take a different path," he said, his words carrying a subtle edge. "I respect that. But just know that you've turned down a chance to scale in a way that's going to make a real difference. You'll be able to do some good, but you'll never reach your full potential. It's just the way it is." Maya listened quietly, her emotions shifting. She had known this conversation would happen sooner or later. Marcus wasn't going to just let go. "I appreciate your input, Marcus," Maya said, keeping her voice steady. "But I believe in the path we've chosen. We'll still make a difference. Maybe not in the way you envision, but in the way that feels right for us." There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Marcus spoke again. "I respect your decision, Maya, but remember, success is measured by impact. And I think you're selling yourself short." Maya took a deep breath. "Success doesn't always look like what you think it should. We'll figure out our own version." She hung up the phone, feeling a strange sense of peace. Marcus had been right about one thing. Success was about impact, but it didn't have to look the same for everyone. Their success was going to be built on their values, their vision, and their commitment to the community. As the days passed, Maya felt more certain than ever that they had made the right choice. They were on the right path, and no matter how much pressure they faced, she knew they were doing things the right way. Maya has chosen a difficult path, one that requires patience and commitment. Do you agree with her decision to reject Marcus's offer and take the longer, more challenging route? How do you define success, and what's more important to you, growth or staying true to your values? Let us know your thoughts below. The morning after her tense conversation with Marcus, Maya woke up with a sense of calm resolve. The decisions had been made, the course set. Now, it was time to focus on action. The team's energy had been contagious in the past weeks, and their excitement about the new direction breathed fresh life into their efforts. But Maya knew that challenges would come. Her phone call with Marcus was proof of that. By mid-morning, Maya was in the office, reviewing proposals for a community partnership event they planned to host in a few weeks. The event was designed to introduce the organization's mission to a broader audience while engaging directly with the community they served. It was a chance to showcase who they were and why they mattered. As she sifted through the plans, a knock on her door drew her attention. It was Jordan, one of the newest members of their team, holding a folder with a nervous but determined expression. "Got a minute?" he asked, stepping inside. "Of course," Maya replied, gesturing for him to sit. "What's on your mind?" Jordan handed her the folder, his voice steady but tinged with excitement. "I've been thinking a lot about our outreach strategy. I know we've been focusing on local impact, but what if we started using more digital platforms to amplify our message? We could reach a lot more people without having to sacrifice the personal connections we value." Maya flipped through the folder, her interest piqued. Inside were detailed notes, ideas for social media campaigns, and potential partnerships with digital creators who could help share their story. "This is great work, Jordan," Maya said, genuinely impressed. "You've thought this through." Jordan nodded. "I just think we have an opportunity here. People care about what we're doing, but a lot of them don't even know we exist yet. We could change that." Maya smiled. "You're right. Let's bring this up at the next team meeting. If we can implement even half of what you've outlined here, it could make a huge difference." As Jordan left the room, Maya felt a renewed sense of optimism. The team's creativity and drive were exactly what would keep them moving forward, even without the resources Marcus had offered. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. The community partnership event was shaping up to be their biggest yet, with local businesses, schools, and community leaders eager to participate. Jordan's digital strategy was also gaining traction. They launched a series of heartfelt posts sharing real stories of the people they had helped, which quickly gained attention online. The response was overwhelming. Comments and messages poured in from people inspired by their work, some asking how they could get involved, others simply thanking them for what they were doing. Maya found herself at the center of it all, managing the logistics of the event while keeping an eye on their growing online presence. It was exhausting, but it was also exhilarating. For the first time, she felt the full weight of the movement they were building, not just within their city, but far beyond it. The day of the event dawned bright and clear. The team arrived early to set up, their excitement palpable. Booths lined the park, showcasing everything from local art inspired by their mission to interactive activities for families. A small stage had been set up for speeches and performances, and a steady stream of attendees began to fill the space. Maya walked through the crowd, greeting guests and making sure everything was running smoothly. The atmosphere was electric. People of all ages and backgrounds were coming together, united by a shared belief in the power of community and connection. As the afternoon wore on, Maya took the stage to address the crowd. Looking out at the sea of faces, she felt a wave of emotion wash over her. This was why she had made the choice she had. This connection, this shared purpose. "Thank you all for being here," she began, her voice steady but filled with feeling. "Today isn't just about celebrating what we've accomplished. It's about looking forward to what we can achieve together. Our mission has always been about people, about building bridges and creating opportunities. And seeing all of you here reminds me that we're not alone in this. Together, we can make a difference." The crowd erupted into applause, and Maya stepped back, her heart full. Later that evening, as the team gathered to debrief, Maya couldn't help but feel proud of what they had accomplished. The event had been a success, not just in terms of turnout, but in the connections they had forged and the momentum they had built. "We did it," Tasha said, raising a cup of coffee in a mock toast. "And this is just the beginning." Maya smiled, raising her own cup. "To the future. To doing things our way." The event has shown the power of community and creativity in driving impact. If you were part of Maya's team, what unique ideas would you bring to help their mission grow? How do you think digital strategies can complement local, on-the-ground efforts? Let us know your thoughts below. The morning after the event, Maya sat at her desk, sifting through feedback emails and social media comments. She couldn't stop smiling. The turnout had exceeded their expectations, and the stories attendees shared were deeply moving. Many had written to thank her team for hosting such a heartfelt and inclusive event. "Check this out," Tasha said, walking in with her tablet. She placed it in front of Maya, showing a video clip from the event that had gone viral. It featured an elderly man from the community talking about how the organization had changed his life. His voice cracked with emotion as he spoke of the kindness he'd experienced and the hope it had restored in him. "That's already been shared thousands of times," Tasha said, her eyes gleaming. "People are tagging us left and right, asking how they can get involved. Maya leaned back, feeling both pride and a sense of responsibility. Their message was reaching further than she had dared to imagine. But with visibility came new challenges. Expectations would grow, and so would the pressure to deliver. Later that afternoon, just as Maya was preparing to join a team meeting, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from one of their biggest community partners. She opened it, her heart sinking as she read the words. "We regret to inform you that we'll be unable to continue supporting your organization due to unforeseen financial constraints. We value the work you're doing and hope to collaborate again in the future." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. The partnership had been a significant source of funding for their initiatives. Losing it would be a blow, especially as they were gaining momentum. She quickly shared the news with Tasha and the rest of the team. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. "Okay," Tasha said after a moment. "This isn't ideal, but it's not the end of the world. We've faced challenges before. We can figure this out." Maya nodded, grateful for Tasha's steady presence. "We'll need to regroup and adjust our plans. Let's focus on diversifying our funding sources. The digital attention we've been getting might help us attract new donors or sponsors." The team sprang into action, brainstorming ideas. They considered everything from launching a crowdfunding campaign to hosting a series of smaller community fundraisers. Maya was reminded once again of their resilience. Just as they were beginning to strategize, another email came in. This one from a local journalist who had attended the event. She wanted to feature Maya's story in an upcoming series about community leaders making a difference. Maya read the email aloud, and the team erupted into cheers. It was the kind of exposure they needed, not just to recover from their setback, but to build an even stronger foundation. "This could open so many doors," Jordan said, already jotting down ideas. "We need to make the most of this." Maya agreed. The story wouldn't just be about her. It would highlight the entire team's efforts and the people they served. It was a chance to share their values and inspire others to get involved. That evening, Maya sat by her window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. The day had been a roller coaster of emotions, but she felt a quiet determination. Challenges were inevitable, but so were opportunities. She thought back to the elderly man who had spoken at the event, whose words had resonated with so many. His gratitude reminded her why they were doing this work. It wasn't about recognition or success on paper. It was about creating real, lasting change. As she prepared for the journalist's interview, Maya resolved to be honest about the ups and downs of their journey. She wanted people to see the whole picture, the struggles, the triumphs, and the unwavering commitment that fueled it all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Maya felt ready. They were building something that mattered, one step at a time. Maya's organization faced a significant setback, but found an opportunity to share their story with a broader audience. How do you think sharing personal and organizational struggles can help build trust and support? Have you ever seen a story that inspired you to take action or get involved in a cause? Share your thoughts below. The next morning, Maya walked into the small cafe where she was meeting the journalist, Clara Morgan. Clara was known for her in-depth profiles on community leaders, and Maya felt both honored and nervous about the opportunity. The cafe buzzed with the morning crowd, the hum of conversation blending with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Clara was already seated near the window, her notepad and recorder set neatly on the table. She stood to greet Maya with a warm smile. "Thanks for meeting with me, Maya," Clara said as they shook hands. "I've been following your work for a while now, and I think your story will resonate with a lot of people." "Thank you," Maya replied, taking a seat. "I'm happy to share whatever I can." As the interview began, Clara's questions were thoughtful and probing, encouraging Maya to delve into her journey. Maya spoke about her upbringing, the values her parents instilled in her, and the pivotal moments that had shaped her passion for community work. "What would you say was the most defining moment in your journey so far?" Clara asked, leaning forward slightly. Maya paused, her mind flashing back to the elderly man's note, the moment that had started it all. "There was a day on a bus," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I gave up my seat to an elderly man, and he handed me a note." "That's already been shared thousands of times," Tasha said, her eyes gleaming. "People are tagging us left and right, asking how they can get involved." Maya leaned back, feeling both pride and a sense of responsibility. Their message was reaching further than she had dared to imagine. But with visibility came new challenges. Expectations would grow, and so would the pressure to deliver. Later that afternoon, just as Maya was preparing to join a team meeting, her phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from one of their biggest community partners. She opened it, her heart sinking as she read the words. "We regret to inform you that we'll be unable to continue supporting your organization due to unforeseen financial constraints. We value the work you're doing and hope to collaborate again in the future." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. The partnership had been a significant source of funding for their initiatives. Losing it would be a blow, especially as they were gaining momentum. She quickly shared the news with Tasha and the rest of the team. The room fell silent as everyone processed the implications. "Okay," Tasha said after a moment. "This isn't ideal, but it's not the end of the world. We've faced challenges before. We can figure this out." Maya nodded, grateful for Tasha's steady presence. "We'll need to regroup and adjust our plans. Let's focus on diversifying our funding sources. The digital attention we've been getting might help us attract new donors or sponsors." The team sprang into action, brainstorming ideas. They considered everything from launching a crowdfunding campaign to hosting a series of smaller community fundraisers. Maya was reminded once again of their resilience. Just as they were beginning to strategize, another email came in. This one from a local journalist who had attended the event. She wanted to feature Maya's story in an upcoming series about community leaders making a difference. Maya read the email aloud, and the team erupted into cheers. It was the kind of exposure they needed, not just to recover from their setback, but to build an even stronger foundation. "This could open so many doors," Jordan said, already jotting down ideas. "We need to make the most of this." Maya agreed. The story wouldn't just be about her. It would highlight the entire team's efforts and the people they served. It was a chance to share their values and inspire others to get involved. That evening, Maya sat by her window, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. The day had been a roller coaster of emotions, but she felt a quiet determination. Challenges were inevitable, but so were opportunities. She thought back to the elderly man who had spoken at the event, whose words had resonated with so many. His gratitude reminded her why they were doing this work. It wasn't about recognition or success on paper. It was about creating real, lasting change. As she prepared for the journalist's interview, Maya resolved to be honest about the ups and downs of their journey. She wanted people to see the whole picture, the struggles, the triumphs, and the unwavering commitment that fueled it all. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but Maya felt ready. They were building something that mattered, one step at a time. Maya's organization faced a significant setback, but found an opportunity to share their story with a broader audience. How do you think sharing personal and organizational struggles can help build trust and support? Have you ever seen a story that inspired you to take action or get involved in a cause? Share your thoughts below. The next morning, Maya walked into the small cafe where she was meeting the journalist, Clara Morgan. Clara was known for her in-depth profiles on community leaders, and Maya felt both honored and nervous about the opportunity. The cafe buzzed with the morning crowd, the hum of conversation blending with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. Clara was already seated near the window, her notepad and recorder set neatly on the table. She stood to greet Maya with a warm smile. "Thanks for meeting with me, Maya," Clara said as they shook hands. "I've been following your work for a while now, and I think your story will resonate with a lot of people." "Thank you," Maya replied, taking a seat. "I'm happy to share whatever I can." As the interview began, Clara's questions were thoughtful and probing, encouraging Maya to delve into her journey. Maya spoke about her upbringing, the values her parents instilled in her, and the pivotal moments that had shaped her passion for community work. "What would you say was the most defining moment in your journey so far?" Clara asked, leaning forward slightly. Maya paused, her mind flashing back to the elderly man's note, the moment that had started it all. "There was a day on a bus," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I gave up my seat to an elderly man, and he handed me a note. It wasn't long, but it said more than words ever could. That note reminded me how small acts of kindness can have ripple effects, how we're all connected in ways we don't always realize. It made me want to create those ripples on a larger scale. Clara listened intently, jotting down notes. That's a powerful story, she said. Do you still have the note? I do, Maya replied with a small smile. It's framed in my office. It reminds me why I started this journey. As the conversation shifted to the challenges Maya's organization faced, she hesitated. It was tempting to focus only on the positive, but Maya knew that honesty was crucial. We've had setbacks, she admitted. Just recently, we lost a significant partnership, and it's been tough to adjust. But challenges like these push us to think creatively, to find new ways to sustain our mission. It's not always easy, but it's worth it. Clara nodded. I think people will appreciate hearing that. Sometimes, the struggles make the successes even more meaningful. By the end of the interview, Maya felt lighter, as though sharing her story had reaffirmed her purpose. Clara thanked her for her openness and promised to send a draft of the article before it went to print. A week later, Clara's article was published online, accompanied by a stunning photograph of Maya standing in her office, the elderly man's framed note visible on the wall behind her. The headline read, How One Note Sparked a Movement, Maya Davis's Journey of Kindness and Community. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Messages flooded in from readers inspired by her story. Some shared their own experiences of giving or receiving kindness, while others asked how they could support her work. One message stood out. Maya, your story reminded me of something my late father used to say, kindness costs nothing but means everything. Thank you for showing the world how true that is. I'd love to help in any way I can. Let's talk about a partnership. The message was from the CEO of a well-known foundation that supported grassroots organizations. Maya read it twice, her heart pounding with a mix of disbelief and excitement. The article's impact didn't stop there. Local businesses reached out, offering to host fundraisers or donate supplies. Volunteers signed up in droves, eager to be part of the movement Maya had built. For Maya, it wasn't just about the resources. They were essential, of course, but what truly moved her was the sense of connection the article had fostered. It was proof that their work resonated with people on a deeply human level. That evening, as Maya stood in her office, she looked at the framed note on the wall. She traced the words with her eyes, feeling the weight of their significance once again. Thank you, she whispered, not just to the man who had written the note, but to everyone who had joined her on this journey. This was only the beginning. Maya's story has inspired a wave of support and new connections. If you were moved by a similar story, how would you want to contribute? Have you ever experienced a moment where a small act of kindness changed your perspective? Share your experiences below. Maya's meeting with the CEO of the foundation, Eleanor Parker, was set for the following week. The two had exchanged a few emails, and Eleanor's enthusiasm for Maya's mission was palpable even through the screen. The possibility of a partnership felt like a turning point, one that could secure the stability Maya's team desperately needed. The meeting was held at the foundation's sleek downtown office. Maya walked in, nerves buzzing but heart steady. Eleanor greeted her warmly, her presence exuding confidence and kindness. It's a pleasure to meet you, Maya, Eleanor said, leading her into a conference room. Your story truly resonated with me. I believe in the power of kindness to create meaningful change, and I see that same belief reflected in your work. Thank you, Maya replied, settling into a chair. It means a lot to hear that from someone like you. The conversation quickly turned to how the foundation could support Maya's organization. Eleanor outlined a grant program designed to fund innovative community projects. We're looking for initiatives that not only address immediate needs but also foster long-term change, Eleanor explained. From what I've seen, your work aligns perfectly with that vision. Maya listened intently, then presented a proposal she and her team had crafted, a plan to expand their outreach programs into underserved neighborhoods while building a digital platform to connect resources with those in need. As she spoke, Maya could see Eleanor nodding thoughtfully, her expression encouraging. This is exactly the kind of initiative we want to support, Eleanor said when Maya finished. Let's work together to make it happen. Maya felt a surge of relief and excitement. This partnership wasn't just about funding. It was a validation of everything she and her team had been working toward. Over the next few weeks, the partnership between Maya's organization and Eleanor's foundation began to take shape. The grant provided the resources they needed to launch their new initiatives, and the Foundation's network opened doors Maya had never imagined. Jordan's digital strategy played a key role in their expansion. The platform he had envisioned started to take form, a user-friendly site that allowed people to share resources, seek help, and connect with their community. The response was immediate and positive. Stories poured in from people who had found assistance through the platform or had been inspired to give back in their own ways. Maya's vision was becoming a reality, and the ripples of kindness were spreading further than she'd ever dreamed. As Maya's organization grew, so did the scrutiny. With increased visibility came challenges. Some questioned their methods, others doubted their motives. Maya knew this was part of the journey, but it still stung. One day, she received an email accusing her team of favoring certain groups over others. The claim was unfounded, but Maya felt the weight of it nonetheless. She called an emergency meeting with her team to address the issue head-on. "We need to be transparent," Maya said. "Let's share our process with the public and make it clear that we're here for everyone. If we've made mistakes, we'll own them and do better." The team agreed, and they worked together to create a detailed report outlining their operations. They also held a town hall meeting to address concerns directly. The experience was humbling, but ultimately strengthened their resolve. It reminded them that trust was something they had to earn every day. As the months went on, Maya's organization continued to thrive. The partnership with the Foundation had not only provided resources but also a sense of legitimacy that helped them navigate the challenges of growth. One evening, Maya received a message from Eleanor. "You're doing incredible work, Maya. I hope you know how much of a difference you're making, not just for the people you serve, but for everyone who's inspired by your story. Keep going." Maya smiled, feeling the truth of those words. The journey was far from over, but she was ready for whatever came next. With new partnerships and challenges, Maya's team is learning to navigate growth while staying true to their mission. How do you think organizations can maintain integrity and transparency as they expand? What strategies would you suggest for building trust with the community? Share your ideas below. Months later, Maya's organization had reached a pivotal moment. The digital platform was thriving, their community programs were expanding, and their message was resonating far beyond the city. Yet, with success came mounting pressures. More people to serve, higher expectations to meet, and increasingly complex operations to manage. One evening, Maya sat at her desk, staring at a growing stack of reports and emails. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Another glowing article about their work. But instead of feeling pride, Maya felt a pang of exhaustion. She had been running on adrenaline for months, and it was beginning to take its toll. The next morning, Tasha walked into Maya's office and immediately noticed her friend's weary expression. "You look like you haven't slept in a week," Tasha said, closing the door behind her. "What's going on?" Maya sighed, leaning back in her chair. "I'm just overwhelmed. Everything's moving so fast. It's like every time we solve one problem, two more pop up. And I keep wondering, what if I can't keep up?" Tasha pulled up a chair, her tone gentle but firm. "Maya, you don't have to do this alone. You've built an amazing team for a reason. Let us shoulder some of this. You've always been the heart of this organization, but you don't have to be the whole machine." Maya looked at her friend, gratitude mixing with the weight of her worries. "You're right," she admitted. "I just don't want to let anyone down." "You won't," Tasha said, "but you have to take care of yourself, too. Otherwise, how can you keep leading?" Maya took Tasha's words to heart. Over the next few weeks, she worked on delegating more responsibilities to her team. She created new leadership roles and empowered her colleagues to take ownership of specific initiatives. Jordan became the head of digital operations, overseeing the platform's continued growth and innovation. Tasha took on the role of director of outreach, coordinating community events and partnerships. Maya focused on strategic planning and storytelling, what she did best. The shift wasn't easy. Letting go of control was a challenge for Maya, but it also brought relief. For the first time in months, she felt like she could breathe again. One day, as Maya was organizing her office, she came across an old notebook tucked away in a drawer. Flipping through its pages, she found notes she had written in the early days of her journey, ideas, sketches, and even a list of dreams for the organization. At the bottom of one page, She had written, "Remember why you started." The words hit her like a wave. In the chaos of growth and success, she had almost lost sight of the simple, powerful motivation that had driven her from the beginning: to create connections through kindness. Maya closed the notebook, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. The work was never going to be easy, but it didn't have to be overwhelming. She just needed to stay anchored in her mission and trust the people around her. Later that week, Maya attended a community feedback session. Dozens of people who had benefited from the organization's programs shared their stories of finding hope, support, and new opportunities. An elderly woman stood up and said, "What you've built here has changed my life. It's not just about the help, it's about knowing someone cares." The room erupted into applause, and Maya felt tears prick her eyes. This was why she had started. This was what mattered. As the session ended, Maya spoke to the group. "This organization isn't about me," she said. "It's about all of us. Every act of kindness, every effort to lift someone up, it all adds to the ripple. Together, we're creating something that will outlast us all." The crowd cheered, their energy reinvigorating her. That night, Maya sat by her window, watching the city lights. The road ahead would still have challenges, but she felt ready to face them. The ripple of kindness was growing, and it was carrying her forward. Maya's journey shows the importance of remembering your why and leaning on your community. Have you ever had a moment where you had to reconnect with your purpose? What helped you find your way again? Share your story below. It was an ordinary afternoon when Maya received a call from an unfamiliar number. She almost ignored it, assuming it was spam, but something made her pick up. "Hello, is this Maya Davis?" a warm, gravelly voice asked. "Yes, this is she. May I ask who's calling?" "This is Henry Thompson," the voice replied. "You don't know me, but I believe you met my father a while back. He was the man who gave you the note on the bus." Maya's heart skipped a beat. She clutched the phone tighter, her breath catching in her throat. "Your father, Mr. Thompson?" "Yes," Henry said. "I came across your story recently, the article about your organization. I couldn't believe it when I saw the note in the picture. That was my dad's handwriting." Maya was speechless for a moment. The connection felt surreal, like a piece of her journey had come full circle. "Your father's note changed my life," Maya finally said, her voice thick with emotion. "I've always wished I could thank him properly." Henry chuckled softly. "He'd be thrilled to know that. My dad was a quiet man, but he believed in doing good wherever he could. He passed away last year, but I know he'd be so proud of what you've done." Maya felt a pang of sadness, but also a profound sense of gratitude. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Your father's kindness sparked something extraordinary. I hope you know how much of an impact he had." Henry continued, "Actually, that's part of why I'm calling. I'd like to meet you, if you're open to it. I've been looking for ways to honor my dad's memory, and after learning about your work, I think I might be able to help." Maya didn't hesitate. "I'd be honored to meet you." They arranged to meet at a local park later that week. When Maya arrived at the park, Henry was already there, sitting on a bench beneath a sprawling oak tree. He was a tall, gentle-looking man in his late 40s, holding a small envelope in his hands. "Thank you for meeting me," Henry said, standing to shake her hand. "Of course," Maya replied. "It's a pleasure to meet you." They sat down, and Henry began to share stories about his father. How he had always believed in helping others, how he had written little notes of encouragement throughout his life. "That day on the bus wasn't unique for him," Henry said. "But what you did with it, how you turned his words into action, that's extraordinary." He handed her the envelope. "I found this among his things after he passed. I think he would have wanted you to have it." Maya opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a folded piece of paper with familiar handwriting. "Kindness is the bridge between hearts. Build it, and the world will follow." Tears welled in Maya's eyes as she read the words. "He was an incredible man," she said softly. Henry nodded. "He was. And now, thanks to you, his legacy lives on in ways I don't think even he could have imagined." Henry then shared his idea. He wanted to establish a fund in his father's name to support Maya's organization. "I believe in what you're doing, and I want to help ensure it continues to grow," he said. Maya was overwhelmed. "Henry, I don't even know what to say. This means so much, not just to me, but to everyone we serve. It's what my dad would have wanted, Henry said with a smile. As they parted ways, Maya felt a deep sense of connection. To Henry, to his father, and to the journey that had brought them together. That evening, she shared the new note with her team, explaining its significance. It was a reminder of how one small act could create ripples far beyond what anyone might expect. We're not just building programs or platforms, Maya said. We're building bridges, just like Mr. Thompson believed. And those bridges will carry us to places we can't even imagine yet. The team raised a toast, their spirits lifted by the unexpected gift and the new partnership it had inspired. Maya's connection to Mr. Thompson's family is a powerful reminder of how acts of kindness can transcend time and space. Have you ever experienced or witnessed a moment where someone's legacy inspired you to act? Share your story below. Months after meeting Henry, the Thompson Fund had become an integral part of Maya's organization. The financial support allowed them to expand their programs even further, reaching communities they had only dreamed of serving before. But more than that, the fund symbolized something deeper, a legacy of kindness passed down from one generation to the next. On the one-year anniversary of the organization's partnership with the Thompson family, Maya and her team hosted a special event. It was held in the community center where their work had first taken root, a deliberate choice to honor their beginnings. The room was filled with people, community members, volunteers, partners, and supporters. Among them was Henry, sitting in the front row with his family. Maya took the stage, her heart full as she looked out at the crowd. This journey started with a single act of kindness, she began. A simple note from a stranger who believed in the power of connection. That note reminded me that even the smallest actions can create ripples, and those ripples can grow into waves of change. She paused, holding up the note Mr. Thompson had written. This was the spark that ignited all of this. And today, I want to thank not only Mr. Thompson, but every single person who has been part of this journey. Your kindness, your support, your belief in our mission. It's what keeps us going. The audience erupted into applause, and Maya felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. As the event continued, Henry took the stage for a surprise announcement. My father believed in leaving the world better than he found it, he said. And I can't think of a better way to honor his memory than by ensuring this organization continues to thrive. That's why my family has decided to establish an endowment in his name, a permanent source of funding to support Maya's work for generations to come. Gasps and applause filled the room. Maya was stunned. She hadn't known about the endowment, and the weight of Henry's generosity brought tears to her eyes. Thank you, she said, her voice shaking. Thank you for believing in us, for believing in this mission. I promise we will honor your father's legacy every step of the way. In the months that followed, the endowment allowed Maya's organization to launch new initiatives, including educational programs, housing support, and a mentorship network for young leaders. Jordan's digital platform had grown into a national resource, connecting thousands of people across the country. Tasha's outreach programs were creating lasting change in communities that had long been overlooked. And Maya, with her renewed focus, continued to lead with passion and clarity. The organization became a model for others, inspiring similar movements in cities far and wide. One evening, Maya sat by her window, the city lights twinkling in the distance. She held Mr. Thompson's original note in her hands, the words now etched into her heart. Kindness is the bridge between hearts. Build it, and the world will follow. She thought about how far the journey had taken her. From that day on the bus, when a stranger's note had given her hope, to now, leading an organization that was changing lives. The ripple had grown into a wave, and Maya knew it would continue long after she was gone. Maya decided to write her own note, one that would carry forward the legacy of kindness. She placed it in an envelope, ready to pass it on to a stranger who might need it. The note read, "Your kindness matters more than you know. Keep believing and keep building bridges. The world needs you." Maya's story was far from over, but this chapter had reached its conclusion. She felt a profound sense of peace, knowing that the work would continue, fueled by the kindness and courage of countless others. As she stepped out into the night, the envelope in her hand, she smiled, ready to pass on the ripple to someone new. Maya's story reminds us that small acts of kindness can create waves of change. What's one act of kindness you've experienced that left a lasting impact on your life? Share your story below to keep the ripple growing.